If someone told you that the Amazon rainforest once contained enormous cities, wide highways, and millions of people, would you believe them? Today, the Amazon is one of the most hostile places on Earth. Endless walls of green, poor, thin soils, rivers that stretch for thousands of miles, predators hidden in every shadow, and almost no visible trace that anyone ever built anything permanent here at all. By modern standards, the idea of raising massive cities in the heart of this jungle sounds almost impossible. And yet, nearly 500 years ago, one man claimed he had seen exactly that. Not scattered tribes living in isolation, not a handful of huts along a riverbank, but long, unbroken stretches of civilization. Villages so close together that one blurred into the next, wide roads leading inland, crowds numbering in the thousands, watching from the riverbanks as strange boats drifted past. His name was Francisco de Orellana. For nearly 400 years, historians dismissed his account as fantasy, the desperate exaggeration of a starving, delirious man clinging to survival on a river with no end. But today, archaeologists are uncovering evidence that suggests Orellana may not have been lying at all. By the end of this story, you'll understand why one of history's strangest expeditions may be forcing us to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Amazon. Let's begin. Francisco de Orellana was born in Spain in the early 1500s, in a country hungry for gold and new worlds to conquer. As a young man, he crossed the Atlantic to join the Spanish campaigns tearing through South America, and he arrived just in time to take part in one of the most consequential conquests in history, the fall of the Inca Empire. The wealth the Spanish found there was almost unimaginable. Mountains of silver, rooms filled with gold, entire cities reorganized under Spanish rule. Orellana fought alongside the Pizarro brothers and eventually formed a close alliance with Gonzalo Pizarro, a man whose ambition would soon lead them both into the unknown. Because if the Andes could hide an empire like the Inca, what else might be hiding beyond them? Rumors began to spread of golden kingdoms, of forests thick with valuable cinnamon, of rulers so wealthy they covered themselves in gold dust. Some called it El Dorado, but at the time, there wasn't one single myth, just a tangle of competing stories, each one pulling ambitious men further east into the green unknown. In February of 1541, Gonzalo Pizarro set out from Quito with an expedition unlike anything the region had seen. Nearly 200 Spanish soldiers, thousands of indigenous porters and allies, horses, herds of pigs for food, hunting dogs, weapons, tools, and enough supplies they hoped to sustain them through unfamiliar territory. It was not enough. The Andes nearly destroyed them before the journey even truly began. Freezing rain, thin air, landslides, men and animals died on the mountain passes before they'd gone any real distance at all. And once they descended into the jungle on the other side, the real suffering started. Supplies vanished faster than anyone had planned for. Rain turned trails into mud. Rivers blocked their path. Hunger set in, and with it, desperation. Eventually, Pizarro made a decision that would change everything. He ordered Francisco de Orellana to take a smaller group, along with their one hastily built boat, downstream, to search for food and bring it back. But the river had other plans. Once caught in its powerful current, turning back was nearly impossible. Orellana and his men were being pulled forward deeper into unknown territory with no way to return. What followed was one of the most extraordinary journeys in the history of exploration. Orellana's men built a second, larger vessel, a brigantine, cobbled together from salvaged iron and whatever timber the jungle provided. And then they entered a river system so vast it defied comprehension. Not just one river, but a labyrinth of tributaries, each wider than anything most of these men had ever seen in Europe. Hunger never left them. Tropical disease crept in, insects swarmed by the millions, storms rolled in with terrifying speed, and always there was the fear of the unknown, of what or who might be waiting around the next bend. They expected emptiness. Based on everything they understood about wild, unclaimed land, they expected an unbroken wilderness with, at best, scattered tribes. Instead, according to Orellana's own account and that of the expedition's chronicler, Friar Gaspar de Carvajal, they found the opposite. Villages stretching along the riverbanks for what they described as miles at a time. thousands of inhabitants gathering to watch them pass, cultivated fields stretching back from the water's edge, canoes by the hundreds, what appeared to be organized markets, wide roads leading away from the river into the interior, roads that, by their account, seemed to connect settlement to settlement. They described meeting chiefs, using interpreters, trading. In some places they were welcomed. In others, they were attacked by fleets of war canoes and forced to fight their way past. It's here that one of the expedition's most famous and most debated claims emerges. Tales of fierce women warriors who fought alongside or instead of the men defending their territory. It was this story that would eventually give the river its name, the Amazon, after the warrior women of Greek legend. Whether these accounts were literal, exaggerated by frightened and starving men, or simply misunderstood through layers of translation, historians still argue about today. What's certain is that the story stuck and shaped how the world would think of this river for centuries. But for every moment of wonder, there was suffering in equal measure. Starvation was constant. Disease spread through the crew. They faced repeated attacks from local defenders protecting their territory. Their boats, patched together from whatever materials they could find, were damaged again and again. The currents grew more dangerous the farther they traveled, and the wildlife around them was entirely unfamiliar and often hostile. Slowly, agonizingly, they drifted on. Weeks turned into months. There was no turning back now, only forward, toward an ocean they weren't even certain they'd reach. And then, after traveling the entire length of the Amazon River, thousands of miles through terrain no European had ever documented, they reached the Atlantic. It's difficult to overstate how remarkable this was. A small, starving, poorly equipped expedition had just completed one of the greatest river journeys in recorded history. Simply surviving should have been impossible, and yet here they were. When Orellana finally made it back to Spain, he told anyone who would listen about what he'd seen: the great civilizations, the endless villages, the roads, the crowds, and many people simply didn't believe him. Still, his story was compelling enough to earn him royal permission to return, this time with the authority and resources to establish a colony along the river he'd discovered. It did not go well. The second expedition was plagued from the start. Poor planning, brutal storms, disease, desertion. Men slipped away or died before they'd even truly begun. Orellana pressed forward anyway. He never reached his goal. In 1546, deep within the Amazon, Francisco de Orellana died, his ambitions and the civilizations he swore he'd seen seemingly buried with him. In the centuries that followed, other explorers searched the Amazon for the cities Orellana described. They found almost nothing: empty riverbanks, unbroken forest, no roads, no ruins, no trace of the crowds he'd claimed to see. So historians drew the obvious conclusion: Orellana had lied, or at the very least, badly exaggerated. It was, after all, an easy story to doubt, told by a starving, delirious man, decades after the fact, with no proof to back it up. But in recent decades, that conclusion has started to unravel. Archaeologists using satellite imagery and LiDAR, laser scanning technology capable of seeing through dense forest canopy, have begun uncovering something extraordinary hidden beneath the trees. Massive earthworks, geometric geoglyphs carved into the earth, engineered causeways connecting settlements, defensive structures, sophisticated agricultural systems, and terra preta, patches of unusually rich, dark soil created deliberately by human hands centuries ago to sustain large populations in land that shouldn't have been able to support them. Some researchers now believe millions of people may have lived across parts of the Amazon before European contact, organized into networks of towns and cities that European diseases, spreading ahead of the explorers themselves through trade routes, may have devastated before most Europeans ever laid eyes on them. And a civilization abandoned that quickly? The rainforest would reclaim it within decades, swallowing roads, fields, and settlements alike until there was nothing left to see from a canoe passing by. To be clear, not every detail of Orellana's account has been confirmed, and historians continue to debate how much of what he described was fact, exaggeration, or simple misunderstanding. But the broad picture, of a populated, organized Amazon is no longer dismissed as fantasy. So we return to the question we started with. What if the greatest lost civilization wasn't buried beneath desert sands or sunk somewhere beneath the sea, but growing quietly beneath the trees of the Amazon all along? Francisco de Orellana may never have found El Dorado, but he may have stumbled onto something just as extraordinary, a vast, sophisticated civilization that vanished so quickly it was nearly erased from history entirely. The Amazon still guards most of its secrets. Every year, archaeologists uncover new evidence hidden beneath that endless green canopy. Perhaps the greatest discoveries are still out there, waiting quietly to be found.